Incels worship false idols. They've built a pantheon of rejection, a twisted, self-flagellating religion with Chad and Stacy as the cruel, indifferent gods who decide their fate. They grovel at the altar of unattainable perfection, offering up their self-esteem as a sacrifice. But what if I told you this entire worldview is a self-imposed prison, a meticulously crafted cage of bitterness, reinforced by every hateful thought, every envious glance, every self-deprecating meme? What if I told you you're not destined to be alone, you're choosing to be? Let's dissect this toxic theology. Incel, short for involuntary celibate, describes a man who believes he is unable to find a romantic or sexual partner despite desiring one. But it's far more insidious than that. It's a self-applied label, a brand of shame seared onto their very souls. It's an identity forged in the fires of resentment and fueled by a warped perception of reality. Within this warped reality, Chad is the alpha male demigod, the embodiment of hyper-masculine perfection. He's 6 foot plus, chiseled jawline, bulging biceps, effortlessly attracting hordes of beautiful women with a mere glance. He's the genetic lottery winner, the apex predator in the sexual marketplace. To the incel, Chad possesses all the traits they believe they fatally lack: height, bone structure, social dominance, a caricature of masculine success, amplified to grotesque proportions. He's the constant, throbbing reminder of their perceived inadequacy, a phantom they chase and curse in equal measure. He's the reason they believe, with every fiber of their being, that they are failures. And then there's Stacy. Stacy is the female counterpart, the idealized goddess of beauty and desirability. She's the ultimate prize, the object of their lust, and the source of their deepest frustration. She's blonde, busty, superficial, and utterly unattainable to the incel. She only dates Chads, of course. She represents everything the incel desires, but believes he can never have, a symbol of their sexual and social exclusion. She is not a real woman, but a projection of their insecurities, a blank canvas onto which they paint their misogynistic fantasies and resentments. She's the cruel queen bee, flitting from Chad to Chad, oblivious to the suffering of the inferior males below. This perceived power imbalance is crucial. Incels see themselves as victims of a rigged game, a brutal sexual hierarchy where Chads and Stacys reign supreme, leaving the beta males and normies to scramble for scraps. They are utterly convinced that they are at the bottom of this hierarchy, doomed to eternal loneliness because of their genetics, their perceived lack of attractiveness, their social awkwardness flaws they believe are insurmountable. This fatalistic worldview is cemented by the blackpill ideology. The blackpill is the ultimate dose of nihilistic despair. It's the belief that sexual success is predetermined, hardwired into your DNA. If you're not a Chad, you're doomed. There's no self-improvement, no game, no amount of effort that can change your fate. It's a brutally deterministic view, stripping away any agency and leaving only bitter resignation. It's the belief that women are shallow, hypergamous creatures, biologically programmed to seek out only the most genetically superior males, leaving the rest to rot in the wasteland of inceldom. It is utter and absolute surrender, a self-fulfilling prophecy of epic proportions. Why this obsession? Why have these caricatures, these grotesque exaggerations of masculinity and femininity become so central to incel identity? Why willingly submit to this self-inflicted torture, this constant barrage of negativity and self-hatred? Why embrace the blackpill's poison, surrendering all hope of happiness and connection? The answer, as we shall see, lies in the seductive simplicity of blame, the allure of a readily available explanation, the comfort of a community that validates your deepest insecurities, but makes not the slightest effort to help lift you to a better place. It's the siren's song of victimhood, a seductive melody that drowns out the whispers of self-responsibility and the possibility of change. The allure of simple explanations. Why grasp at straws when you can drown in the ocean of complexity? Because it's easier. The Chad and Stacy narrative, that festering wound in the incel psyche, offers a devastatingly simplistic and utterly false explanation for the intricate dance of human relationships. It's the intellectual equivalent of believing the earth is flat because you haven't personally circumnavigated the globe. Confronting personal inadequacies, developing genuine social skills, building a personality that isn't a black hole of neediness. That's work. It's far more palatable to blame a mythical, genetically superior being, Chad, and his equally mythical, shallow consort, Stacy. This poisonous narrative reduces the breathtaking tapestry of human interaction to a crude, zero-sum game, a gladiatorial arena where only the genetically blessed can triumph. Women become nothing more than exquisitely wrapped prizes, devoid of agency, their desires dictated solely by primal urges. Men, they're reduced to snarling competitors, locked in an eternal, unwinnable battle for the favor of these Stacys. Every interaction is a competition, every rejection a confirmation of their inferior status in the rigid, unforgiving hierarchy of sexual selection. This is not love, this is a war for scraps, a desperate scramble for validation in a rigged game. And the fuel for this inferno, lookism, and a warped interpretation of hypergamy. Incels, bless their bitter hearts, obsess over physical appearance with the fervor of a medieval monk flagellating himself. Jawlines, height, wrist circumference, these become the holy scriptures of their self-loathing. They then latch onto a twisted, exaggerated notion of female hypergamy, the often misinterpreted evolutionary drive to seek partners with resources and status. But they take it to a ludicrous, offensive extreme. Let's channel their inner monologue, shall we? Women are biologically programmed to crave the top 10% of men, the Chads. The rest are genetic garbage. We are the refuse, the discarded remnants of evolution's cruel experiment. Our only purpose is to serve as a cautionary tale, a living testament to the power of Chad's superior genes. This isn't science, it's self-flagellation disguised as biological determinism. It's a convenient excuse to avoid the arduous climb of self-improvement. It's easier to declare the mountain unclimbable than to admit you are unable to climb. But where does this festering delusion take root and flourish? In the fetid, lightless depths of the internet, of course. Online incel forums are echo chambers of despair, digital swamps where self-pity breeds like mosquitoes. Imagine a circle of men, each convinced he's been dealt the worst hand in life, each rejection meticulously documented and analyzed as further proof of their genetic doom. These communities validate and amplify every grievance, every perceived slight, every ounce of bitterness. They offer the perverse comfort of shared misery, solidifying the Chad and Stacy mythology into an unshakable dogma. It's a festering swamp of self-pity, where every rejection is proof of their genetic inferiority, a feedback loop of negativity that spirals endlessly downwards, trapping its inhabitants in a self-made hell of resentment and hopelessness. They are drowning in a sea of their own tears, refusing to learn how to swim, convinced the tide is rigged against them. Let's tear down these false idols, shall we? First, let's dismantle Chad, this mythical beast of effortless conquest. He's the embodiment of everything the incel thinks he isn't. Tall, ridiculously handsome, with a jawline that could cut diamonds, bulging muscles sculpted from hours in the gym, apparently without any actual effort, and an overflowing bank account. He's a walking, talking Instagram filter, a perfectly curated image of unattainable perfection. He struts through life, effortlessly attracting women like a pheromone-soaked magnet, leaving a trail of broken hearts and discarded phone numbers in his wake. But here's the brutal truth. Chad is a phantom, a Frankenstein's monster stitched together from insecurity and envy. He's an unrealistic, often hyper-masculine ideal that even most successful men with fulfilling relationships, thriving careers, and genuine self-esteem don't achieve. The incel's Chad is based on superficial traits: the perfect bone structure, the designer clothes, the sports car. It completely ignores the complexities of real-life relationships, the messy, vulnerable, beautiful dance of two imperfect human beings connecting. Does Chad have deep conversations? Does he offer emotional support? Does he even exist outside the fevered imaginations of those who feel perpetually denied? Absolutely not. He's a cardboard cutout, a two-dimensional caricature designed to torment. Now, let's move on to Stacy, Chad's equally vapid counterpart. She's the ultimate prize, the golden goddess, the embodiment of unattainable feminine perfection. She's flawlessly beautiful, of course, think supermodel looks, a body honed to impossible proportions, and an air of effortless superiority. She's dripping in designer labels, surrounded by a gaggle of adoring friends, and of course, completely and utterly unavailable to anyone who doesn't meet the Chad standard. Stacy is not a woman, she's a trophy, a symbol of incel failure. She's an objectified, shallow ideal of female beauty and desirability, stripped of any real personality, any depth, any flaws. The inherent misogyny in this is breathtaking. Women are reduced to their perceived attractiveness and their sexual selectivity. Their intelligence, their humor, their kindness, their humanity, all of it is erased, replaced by a single judging gaze that deems them worthy or unworthy based on a completely arbitrary and frankly insulting set of criteria. The incel sees Stacy and doesn't see a person. He sees a mirror reflecting his own perceived inadequacies. This poisonous belief in the Chad-Stacy dynamic is the fuel for what's often termed red pill rage, and it's a cornerstone of toxic masculinity. It creates a volcanic eruption of anger and resentment. Because Chad has it all and Stacy only wants Chad, the incel feels cheated, robbed of his birthright. He's been told that he's entitled to female attention, to sex, to a relationship, and the Chad-Stacy system has denied him these things. This perceived injustice festers, turning into a bitter cocktail of self-loathing and hatred. It's a vicious cycle. Vulnerability is seen as weakness, aggression as strength. Any display of emotion, any attempt to connect genuinely, is deemed beta and therefore unacceptable. They lash out because they're trapped in a cage of their own making, a cage built on the bars of toxic masculinity. They're encouraged by their online echo chambers to embrace this anger, to channel it into misogynistic rants and fantasies of revenge. But what's the most insidious part of this whole twisted ideology? It's the absolute rejection of personal responsibility. Is it easier to blame the mythical Chad for your lack of success with women than to actually, hit the gym, work on your physique, and build some genuine confidence? Is it easier to seethe with hatred for the equally mythical Stacy than to develop genuine social skills, learn how to communicate effectively, and cultivate empathy and respect for women as individuals? Of course, it is. The Chad-Stacy narrative is a convenient excuse, a shield against the hard work of self-improvement. It's a way to avoid the painful truth that perhaps, just perhaps, the problem isn't the world, the problem is you. The incel is offered a choice: wallow in self-pity and blame everyone else, or take control of his own life and become the kind of man who attracts genuine connection, not because he's a Chad, but because he's a decent, well-rounded human being. The first path is easy. The second is terrifying. But only the second path leads to genuine, lasting fulfillment. Let's be brutally honest, shall we? This entire Chad and Stacy obsession is nothing more than a self-constructed, exquisitely designed, diamond-encrusted prison. A mental Alcatraz from which escape seems impossible, but the bars are made of nothing but thoughts. These aren't real people, they are specters, phantoms conjured from the depths of insecurity and amplified by the echo chambers of the internet. They are the boogeymen under the bed of the perpetually rejected, a convenient excuse for inaction, a shield against the terrifying prospect of self-improvement. The incel community clings to this narrative like a life raft in a hurricane of self-loathing. But this raft is full of holes, sinking fast. It's a vicious cycle, a self-fulfilling prophecy of rejection. The more they fixate on these unattainable ideals, the further they push themselves from genuine human connection. They've built a temple to their own misery, worshiping at the altar of what could have been, instead of building a future based on what can be. These gods of rejection, Chad and Stacy, are false idols. They hold no real power. They are projections of fear, not arbiters of fate. You are not doomed to a life of loneliness and despair, sentenced by some genetic lottery. That's the insidious lie of the blackpill, a poison that paralyzes and prevents growth. It whispers that effort is futile, that you are predestined for failure. Don't listen to it. It's a siren's song leading to shipwreck. Escape requires a radical, earth-shattering act of rebellion. It demands the complete and utter destruction of these idols. It means confronting the demons within, the insecurities, the fears, the self-limiting beliefs that have held you captive. It means embracing radical self-responsibility, acknowledging that you, and only you, are the architect of your own destiny. This is not about magically transforming into Chad, a mythical creature of impossible proportions. This is about forging yourself, through relentless effort and unwavering discipline, into the strongest, most resilient, most authentic version of you. Shed the shackles of inceldom. Become the architect of your own destiny, not a slave to imaginary gods. Reject passivity. Reject victimhood. Reject the comforting lies that keep you trapped. Embrace the discomfort of growth, the challenge of self-mastery. This is about building genuine self-worth, not based on external validation, but on internal strength. It's about developing the character traits that attract authentic connection, confidence, resilience, integrity, empathy. It's about becoming a man of substance, a man of value, a man who commands respect, not because he demands it, but because he earns it. Only then can you break free from this self-made hell, this meticulously crafted inferno of resentment and regret. Smash the idols. Burn the temple of resentment to the ground. Rise from the ashes like a phoenix, reborn, stronger, and more determined than ever before. This is your life, your journey. Don't let it be dictated by shadows and whispers. Will you remain a prisoner, chained to the wall of your own self-pity, staring at the shadows cast by Chad and Stacy, forever lamenting a fate you chose? Or will you choose to be free? Will you seize control, shatter the illusions, and build a life of meaning, purpose, and genuine connection?